Andy Bannister has a question for us. Is faith a delusion? Well, of course it is. He just starts out asking that, then he starts tossing logical fallacies our way, and ultimately, he's just hiding from his detractors anyhow, so what difference does it make? Because this is Andy Bannister that we're talking about, the joke of Christian apologists everywhere. So, let's go laugh some more. I haven't done an Andy Bannister video for a while because, at least of late, he really hasn't had much interesting to say. I did want to take a look at this one, though, where he pretends that faith is somehow a virtue while engaging in a pile of logical fallacies because, what else would Andy Bannister do? What else can he do? This is like watching a train wreck in slow motion. He has so many absurd misconceptions and does so many things wrong, and of course he keeps his comments closed so we can't point out all of the things that he fails at. But, he's just got to be right about all of it anyhow because this is Andy. Oh wait, Andy Bannister is just an irrational idiot, so yeah, here we go again.
Is faith a delusion?
Yes, it is. There's no question that it is. All you have to do is play the definition game to see it. Faith is, according to the dictionary, strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. Delusion, likewise from the dictionary, is an idiosyncratic belief or impression that is firmly maintained despite being contradicted by what is generally accepted as reality or rational argument, typically a symptom of mental disorder. Faith is that which is believed despite not being supported by the evidence, and delusion is believing things that are contradicted by reality, i.e., things that are not supported by the evidence. So yes, faith is a delusion. Thanks for playing, Andy.
That's certainly an accusation I sometimes hear from my atheist friends, implying that my Christian faith, and in fact anyone who holds a religious belief, does so because they're deluded.
And they've got it right. You are deluded. This is what happens when you choose to believe things based on feelings and not on facts. Of course, it's not just religion that has this problem. There are lots of things that people believe for bad reasons that fall straight into the delusional trap. People who believe in, alien abductions, Bigfoot, ghosts, you name it, and anything that cannot be objectively verified by demonstrable evidence likely leads to delusion. It doesn't matter how happy or sad your beliefs make you, it matters if they are demonstrably, factually correct. Let us know when you can prove that the tenets of your religion actually are.
So, what can we say by way of response?
Hey, you're right. I'm sorry, I'll stop doing it. I'll try to have higher standards when it comes to the things I allow into my head. How about any of those? No? Yeah, I didn't think so.
Well, the first thing I say to atheist friends who suggest that faith is delusional is I like to sometimes gently point out the fact that the majority of people in the world today, and certainly through human history, have had a religious faith.
Which doesn't change anything. The majority of people used to believe that the earth was flat. They were all wrong. What you're trying here is the logical fallacy argumentum ad populum. It doesn't matter how many people believe a bad idea. It's still a bad idea. Bad ideas for bad reasons remain bad ideas for bad reasons. Waving your hands around and pretending otherwise, it doesn't matter and it makes you look like an idiot.
If you look at the statistics for what people believe, atheists continue today to be a relatively small minority.
Big deal? One person who believes the truth is far superior to 1 billion who believe a lie. Andy has nothing else he can say, though, because he continues to lack any kind of demonstrable evidence to support his emotionally derived faith. So he has to pretend that being wrong doesn't matter. Andy, there's something severely wrong with you. I don't know how else to say it. You are a moron.
Now, of course, numbers don't prove truth, but it definitely would suggest to you that I think if you're an atheist watching this, perhaps a little bit of humility is required, because sure, it's certainly possible that you as the minority are right and the vast majority are wrong, but unless you've actually done the work to prove that, simply saying, oh, the majority are deluded, especially when the majority of people who hold a religious faith live in the Southern Hemisphere and live in non-Western contexts, makes you look arrogant, makes you look completely full of yourself, and makes you, quite frankly, look like a Western imperialist.
Stop being so stupid, Andy. Truth is truth, no matter how you choose to interpret it. This is what happens when you run around with the goalposts just because you have nothing else that you can do. I mean, honestly, the only solution to Andy's dilemma is to present evidence that any of the things that he believes are true. And we all know he can't do that. The very idea. So instead, he engages in logical fallacies because he has nothing else that he can do to make his beliefs look more rational. And let's not forget that Andy keeps his comments and ratings turned off because otherwise, people would point out just what a dishonest wanker he is. So yeah, Andy, go ahead and hide in your safe space. It doesn't make you look any better.
So maybe a little bit of humility might be required.
Yeah, says the guy who seems to think he's the bestest buddy of the creator of the universe. You know, just saying.
But well, the next thing we might say, though, to the faith is a delusion accusation is, if that's the case, it's odd that the studies that have been done of religious faith show that having a religious faith has a whole series of wellness outcomes, well-being outcomes.
None of which changes the fact that it is a delusional belief. I'd point out that Andy doesn't seem to know what any of the words he's using actually mean, but yeah, we all know he just doesn't care. This isn't aimed at the people who are accusing him of being delusional. It's aimed at people on his side who are equally delusional, who he wants to comfort and make think that they've got it all right. I don't care if being a delusional git makes you healthy. It's still delusional. This is yet another fallacy on Andy's part, the appeal to consequences. It doesn't matter if it leads to positive or negative consequences. That says absolutely nothing about the initial argument at all. But of course, Andy doesn't care about the initial argument. He's just going, oh, calling me delusional makes me feel bad, so I've got to get away from that.
And psychiatrists and psychologists have studied this for decades. One of the most famous ones is what is concerning bereavement. If you go through bereavement, if you lose somebody close to you, a friend or a spouse or a parent, it's been shown in study after study after study that having a religious faith, a deep faith in God of some kind, means you will probably come through that process of bereavement in a far more robust and helpful way than people who don't come from a faith-based background. And as I say, multiple studies have shown this to be the case.
And that's bullshit. See, he isn't even addressing the delusional nature of his beliefs, which I guess is no surprise. He doesn't care, and we already knew that. As I've already pointed out, the only way to show that his religious beliefs are not delusional is to show that they're actually true, to present evidence that they are in accordance with reality. And you notice that he's not even attempting to do so. He's just offering excuses for why his beliefs, as delusional and crazy as they might be, might help out in specific circumstances. Yeah, big deal. that doesn't change anything. When we tell you that you're delusional because you believe in things that are not rationally justifiable, he's just going, but, it makes me happy. So what? And here's the reality for anyone who might be interested. There's another way to get through stressful situations without falling apart. Deal with reality as it is. Accept that people die. Don't pretend otherwise. Is it sad? Sure. Is it the end of the world? Of course it isn't. Try living in the real world for once, Andy. Yeah, but I won't be holding my breath.
But still, my atheist friends could say, look, even though we're outnumbered, even though the majority of people in the world are not atheists, even though, sure, faith may have all of these kind of outcomes attached to it, that doesn't prove that it's true.
And yet, you still believe it. Because here's the facts. I don't care if it's beneficial. I don't care if the majority of humans are irrational idiots. I don't care. I care only if the things that you believe, the things that you preach and try to tell other people are real, if those things aren't actually defensible via objective evidence, then you are simply wrong. Nothing else matters. You are wrong, Andy. And the fact that you believe any of this false nonsense shows that you are, in fact, delusional. How is it that you don't understand any of this?
And to my atheist friends, I would say I completely, entirely agree with you. I am not a Christian because the majority of people in the world believe in God.
Except they don't, at least not the Christian God. There are an estimated 2.4 billion Christians out there, at least according to the latest figures that I've seen. There are currently 7.8 billion people on the planet, which, if you do the math, makes your faith still a minority. Now, if you want to say that most people believe in some kind of God, sure, okay, you got a point. But this isn't your God, and that's what you push. You're not claiming the belief in any God is beneficial or correct or worthwhile. You only care about yours. So now, Andy is lying. Yeah, that's a big surprise there, isn't it?
I'm not a Christian because believing in God produces all kinds of benefits for me. The primary reason I am a Christian is I have considered and weighed the evidence, and I believe it to be true.
That evidence that you can't present when people ask. I mean, if people could ask because, closed comments and all. You keep screaming, "We have evidence!" But when we ask you where it is, you can't actually trot it out. It's yet another unfortunate fact when it comes to the religious zealots. They will wave around a bunch of vague claims that they can't prove. Then they declare that the only thing that can solve these conundrums is their God. Not a God, not some God, but their very specific God. And how did you get there? Well, they can't say. Well, I can say. It's wishful thinking, delusion, and blind faith. All of those things are absurd. Until you can prove with supporting evidence, with direct, objectively verifiable supporting evidence, that your specific God actually done it, then you're just making a fool of yourself.
And this is the only way, ultimately, when atheists and Christians engage with each other, I think, to move forward in helpful ways, is to actually talk about the evidence for Christianity, the evidence for atheism, and see where the balance of the evidence lies.
Which would be great, except you and most of your brethren are in hiding, ignoring all of the blatant and obvious flaws in your claims. Now, a long time ago, I did a 4-video series on theistic philosophical claims, and as I pointed out, every single one of them ends with, therefore, God. Except you could insert, therefore, invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies, and not change a thing. You could insert, therefore, Mickey Mouse, and it wouldn't matter. Just because you are attached to your explanation, that doesn't mean that your explanation is true. You have to do a whole lot better than that. And if you look at all of these claims, they all fall apart under even the most cursory of rational evaluation because they aren't intended to convince the skeptics. We can see right through all of your absurd cherry picking. They are just intended to comfort the believers. There's a reason these people spent all of their time preaching to the choir, because anybody else would just crucify them.
And I firmly believe that when you weigh up the bulk of the evidence from philosophy, the evidence from science, the evidence from ethics, and primarily too the evidence from history, from the life, the ministry, the death, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, I believe the evidence stacks up powerfully in favour of the Christian faith.
Except none of that actually exists. We're right back at Delusion. You have a book that you happen to like that makes a bunch of claims which cannot be independently or objectively verified to have ever happened from sources outside of your silly book. But because you are really attached to it, you expect everyone to just roll over and accept that every word in your book is true. Well, unless those words are inconvenient, of course, then you pretend they don't really mean what they said. It's just playing word games and expecting us not to see right through it. And I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work that way.
And friends who are watching this who don't have a faith, whether you're an outright skeptic or agnostic who's thinking about these things, one of my questions to you would be, have you put your own lack of faith, your own worldview commitments as an atheist to the test?
There's nothing to test. We are looking at what you are saying, comparing it to the demonstrable evidence that we have, and we're finding that your beliefs simply do not hold up. That's all being an atheist is. I know that the religious don't like that because they don't want to be constantly in the hot seat, but that's life. Your feelings don't mean a damn thing. This is how intellectual integrity and inquiry work. I don't have to have an alternate view. I'm evaluating what you're saying. Your ideas do not appear to be correct based on the evidence that we have. The same thing is true if, say, we go look at UFO claims. We don't have to take a position that UFOs aren't real. We are simply looking at what believers are saying and seeing how their claims match up against the objective evidence at hand. Do your ideas compare favorably with the facts? In the case of UFOs and cryptids and ghosts and, gods, the answer is no, they do not. Therefore, we don't believe you. That's what being a skeptic is. Funny how, no matter how many times it's explained to you, you can't get it through your tiny little head. It's almost like you are knowingly lying.
It's very easy to sit there and lob bricks at what other people believe. It's much harder to defend what you believe and actually think it through and examine it with careful scrutiny.
I don't believe anything when it comes to gods. I'm not the one making claims. I'm the one pointing out that the things that you say simply are not credible. That's a failure with your views, not mine. I know you really wish that you weren't on the hook and expected to prove that the things that you believe are true, but too bad. Grow up, Andy.
And that's what I did when I became a Christian in my late teens. And I believe back then that the evidence was tremendous. Since then, I've devoted my adult life and my academic life to studying and investigating the evidence for the Christian faith. And I believe it grows stronger and stronger the more you do that.
Yet, you still can't produce the kind of evidence that we ask for. Funny how that works, huh? The second we point out that what you're doing is emotional, not rational, you get offended and you run away and hide and pretend that we're the mean ones. It's terrible that we expect you to back up your own ideas, and when you can't, when you have no way of deflecting the criticism of your own faith back at your detractors, you just sit there and whine about how unfair logic and reason are. Yeah, screw you, Andy. You're being a child.
So why not give Christianity a go? Why not read one of the books we've recommended on the Solas blog? Why not check out the Short Answers video series, of which this is just one video? We have lots of videos looking at different evidences why Christianity is true, and why not give it a serious look?
We have! Geez, Andy, you are a laughingstock in the skeptical community. We've done tons of your videos and pointed out exactly where you fail. But because you're terrified to engage with us, closed comments and all of that, you're either purposely ignorant of what people are saying, or you know that you'd get hammered if you ever cared to speak up. We're not the ones hiding, Andy. It's you. Do something about it.
Because otherwise, if you're an atheist who simply repeats sound bites like faith is a delusion and you haven't even bothered thinking about it, then quite frankly, you risk being deluded yourself.
And for the rest of us who have studied what you're doing in depth and know exactly why you're deluded, what about us? Oh right, we can't possibly exist because it would hurt Andy's precious widow Fifi's to think that he really has no rational idea what the hell he's talking about. It would get in the way of his profit-making if he had to go up against us and actually address our criticisms. He can't do that, can he? Instead, he mischaracterizes atheists, pretends that we're something that we're not, pretends that we're calling him names because, atheists are just mean poopy heads, and now he wants us to defend the views that we don't actually have because that will get him out of his hot seat for just a couple of minutes. Does this sound at all wrong to anyone else? Have I made a mistake in how I see Andy Bannister? I honestly don't think so, but then again, I've taken the time to look at reality and see how well his faith maps to it. Not well. Not well at all. But I don't get to point out where he fails because he's just too terrified to engage with his detractors. And what does that say about Andy Bannister? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.